Those blanket statements are essentially useless because nobody can see themselves in those sentences.
As far as the story, I see a lot of coaches when they're writing their story for the first time, it's just this like giant block of text somewhere, whether it be on their sales page or whether it be in their email. And can you tell us how it would be better to kind of weave that story into the text? And then also how to kind of like help your client relate to it so that it's not just about you, but it's really a reflection of your client, right? Can you help us understand that?
Yes. So I always think it's important to kind of weave little pieces of your story into just say your website or even your sales page, really anything that you're writing. You want to weave those pieces in because you want to put connection points throughout the different sections. So connection points are really easy where you can put in like, I've now had joint pain and you can't do the things that you used to. Like those little specific things that are one talking to your experience and your target audience. Like you're saying, this is probably something that you're facing. And I know because I've experienced it too, versus trying to put everything into an about section or a big block of text. People typically don't read big chunks of text. So you do want to avoid that as much as possible whenever you are writing your website copy. And then I think the second part of the question, like you also want to make it about them. A lot of times people will say your about page isn't about you, it's about your ideal client. I think that's partially true because you do want part of your story in there, but you want to write it in a way that relates back to them where they can see exactly what you're talking about. And that comes from being hyper specific in your examples instead of just putting everything at a very high level overview. That's where you lose people. So you want to give them really specific examples of what you're going to help them through because you've experienced it yourself.
Okay. And as far as stories go, a lot of people, when I talk to them and what's your experience? What's your relatability? What's your story? They don't think of anything. And I'm the same way. Sometimes when I'm really trying to think of a story that relates to this, I'm like, I can't think of what is my story. But what I've come to realize over time is that it's not just one story that I have. It's little snippets that happen like all throughout my life. And it could be as simple as standing in the lunch line at high school and something happens. You know what I mean? Like these things that seem insignificant, but have some metaphor, some relation to whatever that message is that I'm talking about in that particular piece of content, whether it be an email or a social media post or a website. So can you tell us kind of like, how do we find some of these stories and how do we use these stories or connect them? Like, are we supposed to bridge a gap? Are we supposed to connect them? What are we supposed to really do with it?
So I would say somebody probably had one moment where they were like, okay, this is it. But most people, it is like a collection of micro moments. Mine, really started back in college for me with changing my major. And it was just then a collection of little pushes, little moments towards writing, because my dream was to never be a writer. I just ended up here. And I think that using those different pieces of your story to connect with different people is really important. And I think doing that on social media, again, is something that's so, so important to do. And it's a really easy platform to do it on. Your website, your sales page, those are more succinct. Those aren't changing constantly. You're not telling a new story every single day. But on social media, you're presenting different pieces of your story. You're saying things differently. And truthfully, like you want to be repetitive. You don't want to say something one time and then never say it again because your audience is always evolving. Different things land with different people at different times. Like what you maybe want to post tomorrow is something that somebody 6 months ago wasn't ready to hear, but now they're in a different spot. So telling those different stories, and I think pulling those stories out is something where a lot of times we associate our life with like boring. Like we're doing the same thing every single day and we're like, my life is boring. I have this routine. I'm at home, but it is like typical, like little tiny things, little client conversations you can even envision, which are really, really helpful to use. For example, I just made a Instagram carousel post about the M dash, which, now is like a big conversation with AI and ChatGPT and stuff. And it was so relatable because yesterday I woke up and I said, I should actually make a post about this because by multiple clients, I'd been asked about the usage of it and not using it on their website because they didn't want that association, which is fine. And then I just shared my reaction to it. And I think it's those little micro conversations where in the grand scheme, you're like, oh, that was a 2-second conversation, but that sends something that somebody else is wondering. That's something that they want to hear. So for you, it's like maybe going on a walk every day. Like to somebody else, that's the inspirational content that they need. Whereas in your brain, that's just your routine. But doing those like little things, little tweaks, little changes, people want to hear about that and they want to hear about the outcomes because that gives them something to relate to, connect with, aspire to pursue themselves. Like there's so many different stories in our life that we just overlook.
That's so good because I think the further away we get from where our client is, the more we forget that these little things, like for example, for health and wellness coaches, like, putting a little salt and lemon in your warm water in the morning. Like not everybody's doing that or knows to do that to kind of like kickstart, their hydration. And so just these little tiny things, like you said, can really be meaningful to the person who's actually like following you for context or content. And so I love that you brought that up. I think that's really impactful and good for people to hear that those little things that you find unimportant might be very important or very meaningful to somebody else. Um, yeah. So often on coaches' websites, I see verbs like, or words like changing lives so people can live to their fullest potential or healthiest life, right? And it's like, what does that actually mean to the person reading it? It means nothing. It's not going to connect with anybody. So can you talk to us? You mentioned clarity. Can you give us a little bit more detail on how do we put clarity in there? What does that really mean? And why is that so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So those blanket statements are essentially useless because nobody can see themselves in those sentences. Like helping people live their most fulfilling lives, like that could be a vitamin company, that could be a yoga coach, that could be a gym slogan, like it could be your like mom's walking group. Like there's
Right.
so
It
many
could be
different.
somebody in like tech that's offering you something, completely unrelated to health, right?
Exactly. Yes, like you would truly have no idea what that means. And again, I'm very big on being hyper specific and using key examples. So you want when somebody does land on your website, if that's in your website header, if it's in your Instagram bio, if that's how you're introducing yourself when you're doing, interviews or anything like that, you're immediately losing people. Their eyes are glazing over. They have no idea what you're doing or how you can help them. So you really want people, when they see this sentence right away, to be able to say yes or no. I'm either in the right spot or I'm not. So when you're thinking about this, you could write the sentence as like, who exactly is your audience? Is it newer health coaches? Is it moms that are having an afternoon caffeine crash? Like, what changes? So, could you wake up in the afternoon without pain? Could you be asleep by 10:30 p.m.? Could you, I don't know. There's so many different examples. And then if there's a time frame, you would want to put that on as well. So in 8 weeks, in 30 days, things like that to get specific. And then if there's any kind of like without statement, so like without cutting carbs, without giving up coffee, without 90-minute workouts, things like that. So then that blanket statement of I help people live their most fulfilling, healthiest life could turn into I coach new lifters to hit their first unassisted pull-up in 8 weeks, even if they can't do a single hang right now. Like that,
So,
so
yes.
specific. And that's
Yep.
what you want.
Yes, totally. Because the person who can't do that is going to be instantly drawn in, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Especially if that's a goal of theirs, they're going to read that and they're going to say, wait, this is exactly what I need. And that's the feeling that you want. You don't want like confusion around like, I help women lift. Okay, like, do I need to already be lifting? Like, what if I've never walked into a gym before? Like, there's so many different thoughts that will then run through people's head. And that's also why it's important, to have different offers or different, if you have one program that's like an 8-week sprint to help new lifters, like, this is going to speak directly to those people. And then you could have a higher tier program where you're speaking to people who are already like experienced in looking to increase, their overall weight of, what they're benching and everything like that.
Mm-hmm. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but if you are a health or wellness professional and you haven't yet checked out The Wellness Vault, you're missing out. The Wellness Vault is a content hub for coaches who create their own plans and programs for their clients, run workshops, create digital guides, and so much more. You can now do all of this in a fraction of the time so you can focus on your clients and grow your business faster than ever with more you time. The link to The Wellness Vault is in the show notes, so go sign up for your free trial today. Thank you for watching this short clip. To watch or listen to this episode in its entirety, view the description below. See you next time.